Welcome folks, and thanks for stopping by to visit today. My name is Homer Wing, and I'm happy to share a bit of my story with all of you. Now, I suppose you could say I led a fairly ordinary life. I was born right here in Rochester, just after Christmas in 1893. Now, my family wasn't what you'd call well-to-do. My father was a farm laborer, and he worked for a daily wage. When I was old enough, I did the same. I got myself what I thought to be a pretty good job. Well, it was steady work anyway. I was a farmhand over on the Marston Birch Farm and over on Rochester Road, just a few miles south of town. Now, you folks might not recognize the name, but Judge Birch was a really important man in my day. See, he was a federal judge and he lived most of his time in Washington, D.C., but he was married to one of the Hamlin daughters, and they inherited the big Hamlin place. They only stayed there in the summertime, though, so they had a superintendent to run the farm, and I was one of the farmhands who worked for him. Yeah, the Hamlin place is still out there on the corner of Rochester and Hamlin Road, as far as I know. And all that property out there with the houses and the shopping centers on it, it's land I used to work on. Times have changed a lot, I guess. Now, I suppose I would have spent the rest of my life out there if it hadn't been for the war that broke out in Europe in 1914. Guess that's 100 years ago now, isn't it? Yeah, to be honest, I didn't know much about what the rhubarb was all about in the first place, but I registered for the draft just like every other man my age was ordered to do, and when I was 24, I joined the Army. But before I left, I married a young lady named Lucille Whipple. Lucille and I didn't have much time together before my unit was shipped overseas in 1918. Yeah, I was a part of the 310th Engineers. We were an infantry regiment that was ordered to go to Archangel, Russia, and we were sent over there to help out the forces loyal to the Tsar fight against the Bolsheviks who had just taken power there in Russia. But what we were really up against there in Russia were the conditions in Archangel. Now, I hear you folks had a pretty rough winter around here last year. Well, let me tell you something. It was nothing compared to what we had to face. The cold was harsh and bitter. Nothing like today. Sometimes we found ourselves fighting in temperatures 60 degrees below zero. Yeah, you heard me. 60 degrees below. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we decided to call ourselves the Polar Bears. As I'm sure you can see why. It's hard to fight when you can't feel your fingers or your toes. We figured if the Bolsheviks didn't kill us, then the frostbite surely would. Now, besides being cold, we were also forgotten. You see, when the armistice ended the war in November of 1918, our American troops started getting orders to sail home. But not my unit. My unit was left behind there in Archangel for months after the war ended. Well, folks back here in the States started getting pretty upset about that, and started writing to their congressmen. That finally got some action, and we received our orders to sail home in May of 1919. My unit was traveling along the Vologdo Railroad. We had a collision of two of the engines there, and unfortunately I was caught right in the middle of it. So I didn't make it home alive. I did make it home on the train though. My body was shipped home to Rochester, and it seemed as if the entire village came out to meet the train. They shut down all the local businesses on Main Street, and they let all the children out of school, and they had this big parade. I don't know, it just seemed like a lot of fuss for a lowly enlisted soldier who didn't even die in a fierce battle, but I guess my family's sacrifice meant a lot to the people around here. Heck, they even named the American Legion Post after me. And although I've been resting here at Mount Avon for almost a century, I'm sure a few of you still probably recognize my name. Well, I thank you very kindly for remembering me with a visit today, and I hope you come again. In the meantime, though, I believe my friend Mr. Baldwin over there has a few stories to tell you himself.